Larmica Lee is the aristocratic daughter of Count Magnus Lee. She's a central figure in the Vampire Hunter D novels as well as the manga and anime adaptations. Larmica embodies the pride and decline of the vampire nobility. Between her regal beauty and supernatural abilities, there's so much to admire and fear about Larmica Lee. On one hand, she represents the grandeur of her kind. However, on the other, her elitism, disdain for humans, and vulnerability to sunlight and holy symbols highlights the fragile dominance of the nobility in a quickly changing world. In this video, we'll be exploring everything cool and cruel about the amazing Larmica Lee. Who is Larmica Lee and what is her story in Vampire Hunter D? Larmica Lee is a super important character in Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. That's the second animated film adaptation of Hideyuki Kikuchi's Vampire Hunter D series. Larmica is the daughter of Count Magnus Lee, a powerful noble vampire. She goes on to play a significant role in the story's conflict. Actions and motivations. Larmica is portrayed as a cold and aristocratic noble, embodying the pride and superiority of her bloodthirsty kind. Her primary motivation is to preserve her family's legacy and the purity of the nobility. When her father, Count Magnus Lee, abducts a human girl named Charlotte Elburn to turn her into one of his vampire brides, Larmica supports the plan. In her immortal eyes, the idea is just another means to strengthen their bloodline. However, and somewhat ironically, Larmica's actions are also driven by a deep-seated disdain for humans whom she considers inferior to the vampiric race. Key events: Charlotte's abduction. Larmica assists her father in capturing Charlotte. She sees the woman as a suitable candidate to join the family and treats her with a mix of condescension and curiosity. Larmica's attitude reflects her deeply conflicted feelings about humans. She wants to have her cake and eat it too. Confrontation with D. When the legendary half-vampire, half-human D is hired to rescue Charlotte, Larmica faces him in battle. She underestimates Vampire Hunter D, which results in her eventual defeat. Her arrogance and belief in the nobility's invincibility becomes her downfall. You know what they say, the bigger the bite, the harder they fall. Death and legacy. Larmica is ultimately killed by D during their bloody confrontation. Her death symbolizes the decline of the nobility's dominance and the rise of humankind. Despite her cold demeanor, Larmica's final moments hint at a tragic awareness of her kind's fading power. In great death comes great realizations. To recap, Larmica Lee is a tragic figure. She represents the pride and downfall of the vampiric nobility. Her actions are driven by loyalty to her father and her belief in the superiority of her race. If not for her arrogance and inability to adapt to a changing world, she might never have died the way she did. Her story highlights the themes of decay and transition that are central to the Vampire Hunter D series, in which the once dominant vampire nobility faces extinction. What does Larmica Lee look like? Larmica Lee is described as the epitome of aristocratic beauty. She embodies the elegance and grace of the vampire nobility. Her pale, flawless complexion and delicate features further emphasize her noble lineage and otherworldly allure. Her appearance is striking. Long, flowing golden hair cascading down her back, often depicted as shimmering like sunlight. In the novel, her hair is noted to trail along the ground behind her, enunciating her ethereal and regal presence. Larmica's fashion reflects her status and the medieval aesthetic of the nobility. She's often seen wearing elaborate medieval-style dresses that are both opulent and functional. These gorgeous gowns are adorned with intricate designs, lace, and flowing fabrics that enhance her graceful movements. In Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, her dress is a mix of Gothic and Renaissance influences. A high collar, long sleeves, and a bodice that accentuates her slender figure. The dark, rich colors of her clothing contrast with her golden hair, creating a visually stunning and imposing impression. Her beauty is not just physical, but also exudes an air of cold, unapproachable majesty. Her piercing eyes, often described as icy and calculating, reflect her pride on one side and her disdain for humans on the other. The way she looks at humans isn't dissimilar to the way a cat looks at humans, honestly. This combination of physical perfection and aristocratic superiority makes Larmica a symbol for the vampire nobility's grandeur. Her appearance also serves as a visual representation of the themes of beauty, power, and decay found throughout the Vampire Hunter D series. What is Larmica Lee's personality like? Larmica Lee's personality is defined by her elitist views, pride in her noble heritage, and deep disdain for humans. This has made her a quintessential representation of the nobility's arrogance and superiority complex. As the daughter of Count Magnus Lee, she embodies the aristocratic values of her kind, viewing herself and her family as inherently superior to humans whom she regards as weak and insignificant. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what inherited privilege looks like. Elitist views. Larmica's elitism is central to her character. She believes in the inherent supremacy of the nobility, seeing their longevity, power, and refined culture as proof of their dominance. This belief fuels her actions, like when she supported her father's plan to turn Charlotte Elborn into a vampire bride. To Larmica, this is not just an act of bloodline preservation, but also a reinforcement of the nobility's superiority over the human race. Larmica's elitism is so ingrained that she can't stomach the idea of humans as equals. No wonder she often treats them with cold indifference or outright contempt. Pride and nobility. Larmica takes immense pride in her noble lineage, viewing it as a sacred legacy that must be upheld at all costs. This pride manifests in her unwavering loyalty to her father and her commitment to maintaining their family's status. She sees the nobility's decline as a tragedy, clinging to the belief that their reign should be eternal. Her pride, however, borders on hubris because it blinds her to the changing world and the growing strength of human beings. Larmica's arrogance ultimately contributes to her downfall, especially when she underestimates the half-human Dampier known as Vampire Hunter D. Half karma is better than none, as we say. Disdain for humans. Larmica's disdain for humans is palpable. She views them as inferior beings unworthy of respect or any consideration for that matter. This attitude is evident in her interactions with Charlotte, whom she treats with a mix of condescension and curiosity. Larmica sees her as little more than a tool to strengthen her family's bloodline. Her contempt for humans extends to Dampiers, whose mixed heritage she sees as an abomination. Bet Draco Malfoy and she would get along rather nicely. Larmica's deep-seated hatred highlights her inability to adapt to a world where humans and Dampiers are only rising in power. To recap, Larmica Lee's personality is a blend of elitism, pride, and disdain, making her a tragic yet compelling figure in the Vampire Hunter D series. Her unwavering belief in the nobility's superiority is matched by her unrelenting contempt for human beings. While her pride and arrogance lead to her demise, they also make her a poignant symbol of the nobility's fading power. What are Larmica Lee's powers and abilities? As a member of the vampire nobility, Larmica Lee possesses a range of supernatural powers and abilities that highlight her elite status and inherent superiority. These abilities make her a formidable opponent and draw attention to the vast divide between vampires and humans. Immortality and enhanced physiology. Like all vampire nobles, Larmica is immortal, ageless, and immune to the ravages of time. Her body is far superior to that of humans, granting her enhanced strength, speed, and durability. Such physical prowess allows her to effortlessly overpower most humans and engage in combat with skilled adversaries like Vampire Hunter D. Her senses are also heightened, giving her exceptional perception and reflexes. Telekinesis. One of Larmica's most notable abilities is telekinesis, the power to manipulate objects with her mind. She uses this ability to great effect in battle, effortlessly controlling her surroundings and attacking her enemies from a distance. In Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, she demonstrates this power by hurling objects and creating barriers, showcasing her mastery over this skill. Telekinesis not only makes her a dangerous combatant, but also reinforces her image as a vampire with immense power and control. Flight. Larmica can levitate and fly, a common trait among the vampiric nobility. This ability allows her to move gracefully through the air, evading attacks and positioning herself advantageously in combat. Her flight skill adds to her ethereal and otherworldly presence, emphasizing her separation from the grounded world of mortal humans. Regeneration. Larmica possesses rapid regenerative abilities, enabling her to heal from injuries that would be fatal to humans. This makes her incredibly difficult to defeat, as she can quickly recover from wounds and continue the fight. However, her regeneration has its limits, as seen when she is ultimately overpowered by Vampire Hunter D. Noble aura and presence. Larmica exudes an aura of authority and dominance, a trait common among her kind. Her mere presence can intimidate and overwhelm most humans, reinforcing her status as a superior being. This aura is not just psychological, but also a manifestation of her immense power, making her a figure to both fear and revere. Combat skills. While Larmica relies heavily on her supernatural abilities, she's also skilled in hand-to-hand combat. Her training and experience make her adept at both physical and strategic confrontations. However, her overconfidence and reliance on her vampire traits often lead her to underestimate some opponents, which in the end proves to be her downfall. To recap, Larmica Lee's powers and abilities, immortality, telekinesis, flight, regeneration, and her imposing aura make her a quintessential vampire noble and a formidable adversary. These traits highlight the nobility's dominance and the challenges faced by those looking to oppose them. However, Larmica's reliance on such skills and her ingrained arrogance ultimately contribute to her defeat. Does Larmica Lee have any weaknesses? Despite her intimidating powers and aristocratic pedigree, Larmica Lee, like all nobles in the Vampire Hunter D universe, has several weaknesses. These vulnerabilities stem from her own vampiric nature and the traditions of her kind. They also play a crucial role in her eventual downfall. Sunlight! One of Larmica's most significant weaknesses is her vulnerability to sunlight. Exposure to direct sunlight is fatal to vampire nobles. It causes their bodies to disintegrate. This weakness forces Larmica to operate primarily at night or in dark environments, limiting her freedom and strategic options. From a symbolic POV, the fear of sunlight also represents the nobility's shortcomings and their inability to thrive in a world dominated by the light of human progress. Holy symbols and religious artifacts. Larmica, like other vampiric nobles, is susceptible to holy symbols and religious artifacts. These objects, imbued with spiritual or anti-vampiric properties, can repel or harm her. Larmica's pride and power often makes her dismissive of such threats, but these weaknesses nevertheless highlight the nobility's vulnerability to forces beyond their control, particularly those tied to human faith and mortal tradition. Overconfidence and arrogance. A more personal weakness is Larmica's overconfidence and arrogance. As a vampire noble, she believes herself to be invincible and superior to all other beings, including Dhampirs like Vampire Hunter D. This arrogance leads her to underestimate her opponents, D in particular, whose skill and willpower become her undoing. Larmica's inability to adapt or acknowledge the growing strength of humankind in Dhampirs ultimately seals her fate. Adherence to noble traditions. Larmica's strict adherence to noble traditions also serves as a weakness. Her commitment to preserving her family's legacy and the purity of their bloodline blinds her to the changing world. This rigid mindset prevents her from realizing that the vampiric nobility is doomed to decline while humankind is destined to thrive. Larmica's actions, like supporting her father's plan to turn Charlotte into a vampire bride, are driven by tradition rather than practicality, further guaranteeing her loss. To recap, Larmica Lee's weaknesses, her vulnerability to sunlight, her susceptibility to holy symbols, her overconfidence, and adherence to outdated traditions, highlights the fragility of the vampiric nobility and their waning power. These vulnerabilities make Larmica susceptible to defeat in the Vampire Hunter D series. Despite her power and prestige, Larmica's weaknesses ultimately lead to her downfall, marking the end of an era for the vampiric nobility. How is Larmica different in the 1985 OVA? Larmica Lee's portrayal in the 1985 OVA, Vampire Hunter D, differs significantly from her depiction in the novel Vampire Hunter D, Demon Death Chase, published that same year, and the year 2000 film Vampire Hunter D, Bloodlust. These differences include her character design, role in the story, and even her species. The 1985 OVA introduces a unique twist by making her a half-vampire, half-human Dhampir rather than a full noble. Character design and personality. In the 1985 OVA, Larmica is depicted with a more gothic vampire appearance, featuring pale skin, dark hair, and a cold, menacing demeanor. This contrasts with her novel and Bloodlust portrayals where she has golden hair and a more aristocratic, regal beauty. Her personality in the OVA is also more overtly sinister and predatory, emphasizing her vampiric nature. In contrast, the novel and Bloodlust portray her as a proud and aloof noble with an emphasis on her elitism and disdain for humanity. Dhampir status. One of the most significant differences is Larmica's Dhampir status in the 1985 OVA. Unlike in the novel and Bloodlust where she's a full-fledged noble, the OVA reimagines her as a half-vampire. This change also alters her motivations and relationship with her father, Count Magnus Lee. As a Dhampir, Larmica is portrayed as a more conflicted and tragic character, caught between her vampiric heritage and her human side. This internal struggle is absent in the novel and Bloodlust where she's fully immersed in her noble nature. Role in the story. In the 1985 OVA, Larmica plays a more active and antagonistic role. She's depicted as a ruthless enforcer for her father, and she even directly confronts vampire hunter D and engages him in intense battles. Her Dhampir identity adds to the complexity of her character. She grapples with her dual nature while fiercely protecting her family's legacy. In contrast, the novel and Bloodlust show her as a more passive figure, primarily supporting her father's plans and serving as a symbol of the nobility's dwindling power. Key event differences. The OVA also changes key events involving Larmica. For example, her death scene is more dramatic and drawn out, emphasizing her struggle against D and her tragic downfall. In the novel and Bloodlust, her death is swift and serves as a reminder of the nobility's vulnerability. Additionally, the OVA's portrayal of her relationship with her father is more nuanced, highlighting Larmica's loyalty and inner conflict, whereas the novel and Bloodlust focus mainly on her pride and elitism. To recap, Larmica Lee's portrayal in the 1985 OVA differs from the novel and the movie Bloodlust in terms of her appearance, species, and role in the story. The OVA's decision to make her a Dhampir adds depth and tragedy to her character, while the novel and Bloodlust emphasize her aristocratic pride and the decline of the nobility. These differences reflect the unique interpretations of her character across adaptations and offers varied perspectives on her personal motivations and eventual fate. Marvelous verdict! Larmica Lee's story is a poignant reflection of the vampire nobility's fall from self-elected grace. Her arrogance, supernatural powers, and tragic flaws make her a compelling symbol of a fading era. Whether as a full-fledged noble or a conflicted Dhampir, Larmica's character highlights the themes of power, pride, and decay that define the Vampire Hunter D series. Whatever we may hate about her, Larmica Lee undoubtedly leaves a lasting impression as a deluded figure of beauty and tragedy. You're watching Marvelous Videos. Punch those like and subscribe buttons. We have such sights to show you.